Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to provide you with an update as to what's happening in the economy in Germany. Germany is the fourth largest economy in the world after the USA, China and Japan, and is the largest economy in Europe. But unfortunately, Germany has been suffering badly over the last 18 months or so. Prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Germany was buying large quantities of natural gas directly from Russia that was being supplied to it by the Nord Stream pipelines. And I'm sure if you follow the channel, you'll be fully aware that the Nord Stream pipelines were bombed around 12 months ago, and there's still no definitive answer as to who is behind those bombings, but there is a lot of speculation that it was potentially Russia. Now, as soon as news of Russia's invasion of Ukraine broke, Germany came out and said that it no longer wanted to buy any fuel supplies from Russia. And that put the German economy into a very difficult situation because it had built lots of power stations that were being fueled by natural gas. And so the only way to keep those power stations running was to buy in liquefied natural gas. But unfortunately, from Germany's point of view, they didn't have the facilities to be able to convert the LNG back into gas. So this involved a huge amount of investment from the German authorities' point of view, and also they had to start buying large quantities of LNG, which is significantly more expensive than the pipeline gas that it was receiving from Russia. So the base cost of all of that gas rose dramatically, and as a direct result of that, Uniper, which is the main buyer of gas in Germany, actually got into such financial difficulty that the German authorities had to step in and give it a major bailout. But Germany hasn't just been suffering from an increase in the cost of its gas, it's also had problems with regards to oil supplies and its own industry. Historically, Germany has been very strong in terms of industrial output. It's one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. But over the last 5 years or so, it's started to lose its premium position, and the economy is now skirting on the verge of recession. In some reports, you'll hear that it is actually in recession, but as you'll see in today's video, the GDP has been bouncing around, so officially it's not in recession as we stand right now, but it's very, very close. So in today's video, I'll have a look at exactly what has been happening with GDP. We'll then have a look at Germany's population pyramid, because similar to Japan that I talked about in a recent video, Germany now has an aging population. It's got a declining birth rate, and that brings a whole host of problems for Germany in terms of trying to maintain its position as the biggest economy in Europe, and also trying to get itself kick-started again from where it's sitting right now. So we'll take a detailed look at what's happening with industrial output and car manufacture. We'll also have a look at what's happening in the real estate sector, because that's a really important part of the German economy. We'll touch on what's happening with inflation, and then finally today I'll wrap up with my summary. So what I think is likely to happen in Germany over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, and what the implications of that are for the global economy. But before we get started on all of that, I'd like to say thank you so much to everybody that's bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to support the channel, please have a look below where you'll find links to my Patreon channel, where you'll see videos that I'm not posting on YouTube, as well as being able to avoid all of the ads, as well as buymeacoffee.com and YouTube super thanks and membership scheme. Now, to put the importance of Germany into a global perspective, I wanted to have a look at the largest economies in the world as measured by GDP for 2022. And this chart shows the top 10 countries. As you can see, the United States continues to be the largest economy in the world and delivered GDP of $25.5 trillion in 2022. The second largest was China with $18 trillion. Japan came in at number 3 with $4.2 trillion, closely followed by Germany at number 4 with $4.1 trillion. India was number 5 at $3.4 trillion. The United Kingdom was 6th with $3.1 trillion. 7th was France with $2.8 trillion. Russia was actually number 8 with $2.2 trillion. Canada 9 at $2.1 trillion. And Italy came in at number 10 with GDP of $2 trillion. And in terms of getting some context as to how important these top 10 economies are to the global economy, this chart shows the percentage share of global GDP in 2022. And as a point of reference, total GDP for the entire world was around $101 trillion. And what this shows is that the United States and China between them make up more than 43% of the whole of the world's GDP, with the USA contributing 25.3% and China 17.9%. The third largest economy, Japan, contributed 4.2%. Germany contributed 4.1% and India 3.4%. So what this data tells us is that Germany is the fourth largest economy in the world and the largest economy in Europe. This chart shows the year-on-year movements in GDP in Germany dating back to the start of 2021. The scale on the left-hand side of this chart goes from -4% at the bottom to +12% at the top, and these quarterly bar charts show the 12-month movement in GDP. So what this shows is that in the first half of 2021, Germany was officially recorded as being in recession, as it had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. There was then a significant bounce back when GDP rose by 10.8%, and that was in line with what was happening around the rest of the world. As the world came out of the COVID-19 lockdowns, there was a huge increase in demand and spending, and that boosted most economies. However, the bounce back was relatively short-lived, and by the end of 2022, GDP growth was down to 1.3% in Germany. It then fell to 0.8% in the first quarter of 2023, moved into negative territory in the second quarter, which recorded a fall of 0.2%. GDP was entirely flat in June 2023, and the latest figures recorded for September 23 show a further fall of 0.3%. So in terms of answering the question as to whether or not Germany is currently in recession, the answer is technically no, because you need 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP. However, if you look at GDP over the last 3 quarters, we've got -0.2, 0 and -0.3. So it's very, very close to being in recession. If the 0 was a -0.1, then it definitely would be in recession. But as GDP technically didn't fall in the second quarter, Germany isn't in recession right now. However, it's expected that it will officially go into recession when the figures for the final quarter of 2023 are published. One of the factors that's having a huge influence on the German economy is its ageing population. Germany's current population is around 83 million people, and this chart shows its current population pyramid, which you may have seen on the channel before, and basically shows us the distribution of Germany's population by age groups, starting at 0 to 4 at the bottom and going up to 100 plus at the top. And the left-hand side of this chart shows how many males there are in each category, and the right-hand side in red shows how many females there are. And what this chart shows is that the biggest single age category in Germany currently is the 55 to 59 bracket, which accounts for 8.2% of the total population, followed by the 60 to 64 age group, which accounts for 7.5%. Now, if you look at the top of this chart from 55 onwards, it shows a fairly standard layout for a developed country. And the things to note are that generally there is a reduction in the percentage of population in each age category. As people get older, they obviously become more susceptible to dying. And the female side of the chart tends to be larger than the male side, as females have a higher life expectancy. Now, there are 21 age categories showing on this chart, and if you had a standard distribution between all of the age groups between 0 and 80, you would expect each age category to contribute around 5 or 5.5%. And if we now look down the chart, you can see that the largest 2 categories in the bottom half are 30 to 34 and 35 to 39, which account for 6.4% and 6.5% respectively. However, in virtually every year below this, there is a reducing percentage of the population, which indicates that people are having less children in Germany, and therefore we've got an ageing population. And an ageing population represents challenges if you're looking to continue growing your economy, because older people tend to be more cautious, they don't want to take on debt, and they tend to spend less. And if we have a look at the projected change in the population over the next 50 years, it's forecast to reduce from the current level of 83 million to 73 million by 2073. So let's compare the shape of the Germany chart to the other big economies in the world. This is the population pyramid for the United States, whose population is currently around 340 million people. And as you can see, it has a much more rectangular shape, and the vast majority of the age categories between 0 and 65 represent more than 6% of the population. Now, if you have a look at the bottom 3 categories of this chart, you can see that there is a slight tapering, which indicates a reduction in the birth rate. But one of the things that the USA has in its favour is that it's still attracting lots of immigration, so people are moving to the USA, which keeps the population up. The population pyramid for China also has a more rectangular shape than Germany. However, if you look at the 6 sections at the bottom from 0 to 29, you can see that there is a pronounced reduction in the percentage of people in those age brackets as a result of the introduction of the one child per family policy. And interestingly, the population of China is now reducing. India has overtaken it as the largest country in the world, and the total population is forecast to reduce from the current level of 1.43 billion to 1.05 billion over the next 50 years. The population pyramid for Japan has similar characteristics to Germany, and you can see that the largest age group here is 50 to 54, which represents 7.5% of the population, closely followed by 45 to 50, representing 7.3%. And in every single year below 45, there is a reduction in the percentage of population. And this reflects the declining birth rate that Japan has experienced for the last 45 years. And if you follow the channel, you'll know that I posted a video recently talking about the major challenges that Japan is now facing as a result of its aging population. This chart shows the population pyramid for India, which is more oval in shape and has a heavier weighting at the bottom. The average age expectancy in India is lower than it is in countries like Germany, so there's not as many people at the top end of this chart. There are far more at the bottom, and the biggest single age group is 20 to 24, which accounts for 8.9% of the population, followed by 15 to 19, which accounts for 8.6%. And although the birth rate is now declining in India, the youngest age category of 0 to 4 still accounts for 7.9% of the population. And in terms of what this means for the Indian population, it's currently sitting at 1.43 billion, and that figure is expected to increase to 1.68 billion over the next 50 years. This chart shows the population chart for the United Kingdom, which is the second largest economy in Europe after Germany. And as you can see, it has a much more rectangular shape than Germany. And despite the falling birth rate in the UK, the population is forecast to increase from the current level of 68 million to 71 million over the next 50 years, predominantly as a result of increases in immigration. And finally, this is the population pyramid for France, which is the third largest economy in Europe. And once again, it has a much more rectangular shape than Germany. And France's current population of 65 million is forecast to drop slightly to 64 million over the next 50 years as a result of its declining birth rate. Germany is an industrial nation and is a net exporter, and this chart shows the percentage changes in industrial production over the last 12 months. And what this shows is that there have only been 4 months out of the last 12 where Germany has achieved positive growth in industrial output. And since March 2023, the performance of German industry has been highly concerning. In March, the year-on-year change in industrial production was down 2.4%. There was a slight bounce back in April, where the 12-month rolling figure was recorded as positive growth of 0.3%. In May, the annual growth figure was entirely flat at 0. In June, it fell by 1.5%. The position improved slightly in July and August, but remained in negative territory. And in September, which is the most recent month that we have figures for, the annual movement in industrial production was a 1.4% fall. And for a country that has a high dependency on its industry, this is really concerning. Germany's single biggest export product is automobiles. Germany is synonymous with quality cars such as BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, and Volkswagen. And this chart shows the total volume of cars produced in Germany between 1990 and 2022. And what this shows is that between 1992 and 2016, there was almost continuous growth in the volume of cars that Germany was producing, rising from 3.8 million to 5.8 million over that period. However, since 2016, the volume of cars produced in Germany has fallen significantly, and in 2022 it was down to 3.4 million, which was the lowest figure since 1990, apart from 2021, when a total of 3.1 million cars were produced. And one of the big concerns from Germany's point of view is that the world is now moving away from traditional automobiles towards electric cars, and German cars are now under serious threat. This chart shows the top 10 selling battery electric vehicles globally in 2022. As you can see, the best-selling fully electric vehicle was the Tesla Model Y, which sold almost 750,000 units, followed by the Tesla Model 3, which sold more than 480,000. The third best-selling car in the world was the Chinese-manufactured Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, which sold more than 443,000 models, followed by the Chinese-manufactured BYD Dolphin, which sold more than 205,000 units, and the BYD Yuan Plus Atto 3, which sold more than 180,000. And the only German manufactured car that made it into the top 10 was the Volkswagen ID.4, which sold around 176,000 units, and the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th cars on this list were all manufactured in China. And in terms of looking at Germany's home market of Europe, Germany did have the two best-selling cars in 2022, the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Volkswagen ID.3. However, out of the top 10 selling vehicles, only 4 of them were made in Germany. The BMW iX3 came in at number 4, and the Mini Hatch was number 9 on this list. And for any petrol heads who are not fans of electric vehicles, this chart shows the top 10 selling car models in 2022 for any type of transmission. And what this shows is that the top 2 selling cars were produced by Toyota. The RAV4 Wilander sold over 1 million vehicles, and the Corolla Levin sedan sold over 991,000. The third best-selling car was the Tesla Model Y, followed by the Honda CR-V, the Toyota Camry, the Toyota Hilux, the Nissan Sentra, the Toyota Corolla, the Ford F-150 and the Tesla Model 3. So no German cars made it into the top 10 global selling cars in 2022. And in fact, there was only one model, the Volkswagen Levida, which made it into the top 30. And this really shows that Germany is losing its position as one of the biggest manufacturers of cars in Europe. Germany's real estate sector is the bedrock of German livelihood and accounts for around 20% of output and 10% of jobs in the economy. And this chart shows the real estate transaction volume dating back to 2008. And the scale on the left-hand side of this chart is shown in billions of euros. And these figures show that in 2008, real estate volumes were sitting at around 9 billion euros. There was then a significant fall after the global financial crisis. However, between 2009 and 2022, there was a rapid increase in real estate volumes, and the market hit a peak of more than 50 billion euros in 2022. However, as you can see from the right-hand side of this chart, over the last 18 months or so, there has been a significant decline, and the current level of real estate transactions is now sitting at around 7 billion, which is the lowest level for more than 10 years. And this chart shows the breakdown of new building by different sectors, dating back to the start of 2021. The blue section at the bottom of these bar charts represents residential new builds, the yellow section office, the green section retail, the brown section logistics, the black section hotels, and the purple section at the top is all other buildings. And as you can see from this chart, there's been a significant reduction in activity in the first 2 quarters of 2023. And the sector that's seen the biggest single reduction is residential. And this ties in with what's happening in the German economy, because as the economy moves further into recession, and as interest rates have increased rapidly over the last 12 months, demand for residential property has fallen significantly. This chart shows the movement in the official rate of inflation in Germany over the last 12 months. And I thought it was worth sharing this because inflation has been a problem for lots of big economies over the last 2 years. And Germany was one of the countries in Europe that suffered the most as a result of the fact that prior to the invasion of Ukraine, it was importing large volumes of natural gas directly from Russia via the Nord Stream pipelines. And as you can see, this time last year, inflation in Germany was running at almost 9%. And one of the problems that Germany faced is that it's part of the European Union, and therefore interest rates are decided centrally. Germany is no longer in control of its own rates. It's part of the collective agreement. And this chart shows the movement in interest rates over the last 12 months. And as this shows, Europe actually took its decision to start increasing interest rates much later than economies such as the USA, Canada, and the UK. However, over the last 15 months, there have been 11 consecutive interest rate increases to the current level of 4.75%. And the impact of those interest rate increases has been to bring down inflation. As you can see, over the last 6 months or so, inflation has steadily come down and is now running at 3.8% against the target rate of 2% in Germany. So it's around about double where the German authorities want it to be, but clearly it's significantly better than it was this time last year. However, the downside of these interest rate increases is that it's both increased the cost of borrowing to anybody that has variable rate debt, and also has led to a reduction in new borrowing because people are discouraged as a result of the higher costs. And as we've discussed in today's video, the demographic characteristics of Germany with its aging population means that there has been a reduction in spending, which has accelerated the slowdown in the economy. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video firstly to give you an update as to what's happening with Germany, and then secondly to talk about what's likely to happen over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. Now, as we talked about at the start of the video, the problems really started for Germany when Russia invaded Ukraine, because Germany was so dependent on those supplies of Russian natural gas. The Nord Stream pipeline had been developed as a joint venture between Russia and Germany, and it was so successful that they actually built a second pipeline called Nord Stream 2, which was never officially opened. Joe Biden was fiercely against it. He thought that Russia was becoming far too dominant in terms of its supply of fuel to Europe, and so he didn't want Germany to become even more dependent. And as things turned out, he was probably right. But one of the problems that Germany faced was as soon as it turned its back on Russia, it caused a massive increase in the cost of all of its fuel. And because that fuel was being used to generate electricity, that meant that it fed through into the price of everything in Germany. And as we saw from the data, inflation shot up to more than 4 times the target rate. And over the last 15 months or so, Germany has seen its inflation starting to come back down. But the price of that has been an increase in interest rates. And those increases in interest rates have now caused a slowdown in the German economy, which has been accentuated by the fact that Germany is now losing its position as one of the premium manufacturers of vehicles and other industrial products. And as we saw from the population pyramid, Germany has had a declining birth rate for a long period of time, and it's now got an aging population. And as we talked about in the recent video on Japan, when you've got an aging population, it's really difficult to kickstart your economy because older people tend to be more conservative, more cautious. When interest rates go up rapidly, as they have done in Germany, that encourages all of those people to start saving because they're going to be paid interest on any money that they're keeping in the bank. And that's the last thing that Germany wants at the moment. They want people to start spending. But if they were to reduce interest rates to encourage spending, that would drive up inflation. And so you get this really vicious circle that's difficult to break out of. Now, historically, the two biggest sectors in Germany that have really driven the economy are manufacturing and real estate. And both of those sectors are in real difficulty right now. Germany has lost its premium position as the world's best manufacturer producing premium products. And as you saw from the 2022 car data, Japan and China have really displaced Germany. And in terms of electric vehicles, Germany is really struggling right now to be able to maintain its positions. And the situation in real estate is even worse than that. Real estate has been a major driver in Germany for a long period of time. But unfortunately, as the economy has slowed down, the attraction of residential property has fallen significantly. And Germany is now experiencing falling prices in the market, which is likely to make things worse. And the combination of all of these factors has now taken Germany to the brink of recession. It's extremely likely when we see the figures for Q4 2023 that there will be a further fall in the 12-month GDP figure, which means that Germany will be officially recorded as being in recession. Now, in terms of how Germany is going to get itself out of this situation, the German authorities are trying to stimulate the economy, but sectors such as manufacturing and real estate don't turn around overnight. So it's unlikely that we're going to see a major bounce back for the German economy in the first half of 2024. It may achieve an element of growth. It might be able to turn that negative GDP into positive figures, but it's likely that we will see extremely low levels of growth if Germany can get there. So what we've got is a situation here where the largest economy in Europe is really struggling, and because of the characteristics of the population and the falling birth rate and the aging population, it's going to be extremely difficult for the German authorities to be able to resolve that, and it's likely that Germany will therefore see slow levels of growth, lower than the rest of Europe, over the next 12 to 18 months. So hopefully you found today's episode useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.